Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lock-Cast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. This week we're going over UFC 250, headlined by the women's featherweight title between Amanda Nunes and Felicia Spencer. Should be a fun fight. Not the most intriguing on paper, but I think that a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised in terms of the fight that we're going to get here between those two ladies. Right off the bat, it's wedding week for your boy. So I'll be getting married at the end of this week. Obviously, due to this whole COVID shit, it's not going to be as crazy as originally planned. We're just going to have me, my soon-to-be wife, two witnesses, and a minister there. So we're just going to bang that thing out. And then from there, just come home, have some lunch with the family, and then head off to a cottage for the weekend. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we're going to be gone, which means that I'm going to be going completely dark on social media. I won't be checking the Twitter, checking the YouTube, checking the fights. I don't want to get the fights spoiled for me because I won't be able to watch them that night. When I get back on Tuesday, I'll definitely be able to watch it at that point, which is when I'll start to reconnect with the world once again. But as soon as Saturday hits, I'm completely gone. I'm completely out. So wish your boy luck. I can't wait. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, but all of our actual festivities will be happening next year in terms of the party, reception, all that type of crap. I'm really looking forward to that, but this weekend alone is kind of what me and my girl have always wanted. We wanted something super intimate, and it took a pandemic for it to play out this way, but we're looking at it glass half full, and we're really going to enjoy this experience while we can. All right, enough about my personal life. Let's go over the last event that happened, UFC Vegas. I only had a small card there, and I kind of wish I went a little bit harder on the card, considering that I went 8-2 on my predictions last week. But let's quickly go over it. I had a 4-unit play, my lock of the night play, on the under 2.5 in the Billy Quarantillo and Spike Carlisle fight. Man, there were so many opportunities for finishes there, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It's like one thing if like both guys are just staring at each other or they're just grapple fucking each other to lose an under, but to lose an under this way, it just hurts. Both guys had plenty of opportunities to finish. The opponent was always able to get out of bad positions or recover and then come back with their own barrage or anything like that. So minus 4 units there, but luckily the dog of the night hits for us. I wish I went a little bit deeper on this too, because again, if you guys have been following me for a while, I've been a huge Woodley naysayer. Not a hater, but a guy that has seen through the bullshit that Woodley kind of puts out there, and the weird perception that people have of Tyron Woodley. So happy for Gilbert Burns there, and for people saying that he's going to go out there and beat Kamaru Usman, not completely on board with that either. We'll see what happens, but I'm happy that Gilbert Burns won that 1.64 units there. I'm happy with that. All right. This card that we got, UFC 250, overall, not that bad of a card. It's getting a lot of flack due to the fact that it's, the main event is just not the most appealing, but the rest of the card is sprinkled with great fights. Cory Sandhagen against Aljamain Sterling, Raphael Assuncao against Cody Garbrandt, Rocco Martin against Magny. There's a ton of fights on here that I'm super psyched for, so I can't wait to get back on Tuesday to actually watch them and see how the bets play out. After going through this entire card and breaking it down, I believe that I'm going to have a plethora of bets for this fight, between 5 and 6 possible bets here. And if you guys don't already know, I normally break these fights down prior, and as each breakdown finishes, I post it right to my Patreon. So hit up the Patreon if you guys want to get these breakdowns even quicker. I try to get them out as soon as possible. As soon as I finish recording, I put it up onto my Patreon, and then my Patreon subscribers are able to get it ASAP. So I apologize for the lateness of this, but again, if you're a patron, then you got this content already. So, but either way, make sure you guys hit out the Patreon. Everything is in the description below. Make sure you guys check that shit out. All right, let's get into the breakdowns. Evan Dunham versus Herbert Burns. This fight's intriguing due to the fact that this is Evan Dunham coming back from his retirement. Last time we saw him in the cage was against Francisco Trinaldo way back in September of 2018. He was actually scheduled to fight Michael Johnson in April before this whole COVID thing went down. Obviously, that fight got canceled, and now here he is against Herbert Burns, the brother of Gilbert Burns, who just recently won a huge fight over Tyron Woodley to pretty much cement himself as the number one contender in the welterweight featherweight division. But this fight with Herbert Burns, it's going to be at a catch weight of 150 pounds. I'm intrigued to know what kind of Evan Dunham we're going to see on the return. And in terms of the odds here, we're talking about minus 230 Herbert Burns, plus 190 Evan Dunham. And right off the bat, I think even pre-tape, I thought this line was quite wide. And, post-tape, I still feel the same way. I think we were definitely going to get a lot of value on Evan Dunham here. So let's start off with Evan Dunham. Great jiu-jitsu, one of the top-notch black belt jiu-jitsu players in the UFC. He's up there in age right now. He's 38 years old. His hands is something that have really looked better and better as his fights have gone on. He's a really good overall MMA fighter, not just super good at one thing, but just is really good at pretty much combining all aspects of MMA. And he's a tough, gritty fighter as well too. He can take punishment and still come back and have a good performance, as we saw in the Beneil Dariush fight. We saw him get rocked and dropped early in that fight, but he was still able to come back, win the second and third round on two judges' scorecards, and pretty much secure a draw in that fight. There's one judge that scored it 29-28 for Beneil Dariush, and that just kind of states that they didn't give him the second round, whereas the two other judges gave Evan Dunham round 2 and round 3, and then obviously gave Beneil Dariush 10-8 in round 1. His hands have looked good. Like he hurt Joe Lozon multiple times, and obviously I know that Joe Lozon isn't obviously Herbert Burns, and obviously not as young as Herbert Burns. One thing I do want to confirm is actually the age of Herbert Burns. So he's 32 years old, so he's still pretty much in his fighting prime. Big win over Rick Glenn when he went up against him. Had that draw against Beneil Dariush. And then the Obal Mercia and Francisco Trinaldo losses. I really want to get into those. So the OAM fight, 53 seconds, knees and punches. But if you really notice, if you watch there's the finishing sequence, which is the knee that Obal Mercier lands, and then you see Evan Dunham crumple. But if you pull that back a little bit further, you'll actually notice that OAM actually lands a beautiful punch to the body, and it kind of gets caught up and overlooked a little bit due to the fact that there was a little bit more chaos going on in that exchange. But you kind of visibly see the strain in Evan Dunham's neck as he's trying to get his gas about him, because he was definitely hurt by that. And even in that OAM knee that for most people began the finishing sequence, you saw that it wasn't like the hardest knee either. It's like he just hit him right in the perfect spot, and we saw Evan Dunham drop, and it really hurt him. But I think that it was just more of a repetitive blow to the same spot. Again, watch that last punch. He hit it very well, right on the target, and then OAM did a good job of following up, biding his time, but following up and still getting the victory in under less than a minute. And then the Francisco Trinaldo fight. You see Evan Dunham throw a beautiful uppercut, kind of misses, and Trinaldo follows up with a beautiful knee, while Evan Dunham's ribs are just completely extended. It was the perfect shot. It's like opening up the precious spot, and then just Trinaldo finding that beautiful knee right in the perfect spot, and dropping and hurting Evan Dunham in the process. So the notion out there that the fact that Evan Dunham has a soft tummy or a soft body and he can be hurt to the body, just like Matt Brown continuously gets hurt to the body, or Donald Cerrone gets continuously hurt to the body, I think that might be a little bit over exaggerated going into this fight, and I don't think it's something that we'll have to be super worried about. So as long as this fight stays on the feet, I think Evan Dunham could absolutely pick apart Herbert Burns, who hasn't shown the greatest striking. In his last loss, you see that he gets absolutely outstruck. He's doing his best to try to get this fight to the ground. And I think even if he tries to get this fight to the ground with Dunham, he's going to have difficulty submitting him. Dunham's a high-level jiu-jitsu player as well, too. So, Herbert Burns is really going to have to work to get that finish. He might be able to grind out a 3-round decision here over Evan Dunham, but we know from what we've seen for Herbert Burns, he's not really a decision fighter. He likes to go for the finish. He likes to get the submission. He likes to get the knockout. But it's going to be tough to get that against Evan Dunham here, unless he just solely focuses entirely on the body of Evan Dunham. I highly doubt we're going to see him knock out Evan Dunham here. I like Dunham. I think that again, another thing, I don't think Herbert Burns has the best takedowns either. I think I don't think Herbert Burns has the best takedowns either. So we'll see Evan Dunham be able to keep this on the feet and really get his hands working. You see him being able to put his punches together, ending combinations with kicks. He's very, very much a very well refined striker and will have the advantage here on the feet. Herbert Burns is just a little bit too chaotic, too wild. When you see Herbert Burns' fights, when they end up on the ground, it's strictly due to the fact that he's like trying to pull guard or he's hurt the opponent or whatever it is. It's not often that you see him actually secure a takedown. With Evan Dunham, great takedown defense. I believe the last time he was actually taken down was by Raphael dos Anjos. I might be off on that, but I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It might have even been 2015, either the Rodrigo Dam fight or the Ross Pearson fight. But regardless, I don't see Burns getting Evan Dunham to the ground. It's going to be a tough way for him to get that fight there. I like him. I like Dunham at all odds. We'll have to, keep our fingers crossed slightly due to the fact that, again, it's a comeback fight for him. He hasn't fought in over 2 years, close to 2 years. So that's the only real thing we need to keep in mind here. Otherwise, plus 190, plus 200 for Evan Dunham is a steal in my opinion. If I get that plus 200 on one of my sites, I'm definitely going to pull the trigger, probably 1 to 1.5 units. But I think he's a very live dog here. A lot of people might be just recency bias, betting Herbert Burns here. He looked great against Nate Landwehr, put him away really quickly. But I think you got to take that fight out of consideration compared to this fight against Evan Dunham. So I'm going to go with Evan Dunham to win by decision. I think that his hands are going to look really good here, and he'll box Herbert Burns' face off. And again, even if this fight hits the ground, I think Evan Dunham will be safe. Very high-level jiu-jitsu guy himself, too. We're going to go with Evan Dunham to win by decision. Great dog here at roughly plus 200. Devin Clark versus Alonzo Menifield. We got minus 220 on Alonzo Menifield, plus 180 on Devin Clark. Alonzo Menifield, let's start off with him. Safe Sayud product over at Fortis MMA. 9-0 now. 2-0 in the UFC. He had two first-round finishes over Vinicius Mejia and Paul Craig. And then on the Contender Series, he had a quick fight with Deshaun Boatwright, 8 seconds, where he just went in there and quickly got rid of him. My concern with Alonzo Menifield is the fact that he could have a suspect gas tank. And when he's going up against a wrestler like Devin Clark here, Clark could actually just go, as long as he closes the distance without taking too heavy of shots, Clark should be able to push Alonzo Menifield up against the cage, wear him out that way, go for endless takedowns, because we know that that's what Devin Clark is capable of. However, the only concern with Devin Clark in this fight has got to be his chin. We've seen him get knocked out numerous times in the past. Even his UFC debut, he got finished by Alex Nicholson pretty quickly at 185. Then obviously he's gone up to 205 now. He's gotten finished in his last 3 losses were all by finish. 2 of them by submission. Last 4 losses by finish, actually. But he's beaten guys like Josh Stansbury, Jake Collier, Mike Rodriguez, Darko Stosic, and Daquan Townsend. All guys that I don't believe are that high level. Alonzo Menifield, on the other hand, huge power. Luckily for him, his last 2 fights were against pure jiu-jitsu guys who didn't really have the best chance of getting the fight to the ground. I believe Devin Clark has the best chance of getting the fight to the ground out of those 3 guys. But even that, he's going to have to eat some hell on the way in. If this was a fight, or if this was a wrestler that had a slightly better chin than Devin Clark, I would probably like the dog money on Devin Clark. Plus 180 is very, very good for in a fight where, the only real path to victory for Alonzo Menifield is that knockout. And that's a huge possibility, again, due to the fact that Devin Clark has a very suspect chin. Minus 150 for Alonzo Menifield inside the distance is not that bad of a price tag, but there's no way I would pay minus 220 for Alonzo Menifield straight up. There's no way he's winning this fight by decision. There's no way he's going to go out there and just absolutely outstrike, outpace, and outvolume Devin Clark in a 15-minute fight. Devin Clark's going to make this a tough fight for Menifield. Again, clinch up against the cage, drag this fight to the ground, and then just he might have a difficult time holding him down in that first round as Alonzo Menifield has a lot of gas. But the longer this fight goes, the more it's in Devin Clark's favor. It's so hard for me to trust Devin Clark's chin, though. Like, he definitely has to eat shots to get on the inside. I don't think Menifield has the craziest power, being that close. He's going to need to land that punch at range if he's going to be able to put Devin Clark out, which is why Devin Clark needs to be totally out or totally in. Again, it's very, very enticing, Devin Clark at plus 180, but he's just shat the bed so many times in the past, and I feel like there will be some good game planning on Saif Sayoud's part to ensure that Alonzo Menifield doesn't really exert his entire gas tank in that 5 minutes, but he needs to be very efficient in terms of getting that knockout. I believe he can. We've seen Devin Clark duck his head numerous times before when he's throwing overhand rights. Obviously, he tries to disguise that, whether it's going to be an overhand punch or a takedown. I think that if they set up like an uppercut up the middle, Alonzo Menifield is going to be able to land beautifully on Devin Clark and put him out. But again, minus 220, not really looking to bet that. Minus 150 on him to win inside the distance. Probably the better bet, but still is something that would pass on. But man, this fight's a total pass. Like, you can make a perfect argument on both sides. The value is on Devin Clark, especially the tool set that he brings to this fight. The better cardio, obviously the better wrestling, but we just don't know if he's going to be able to get that takedown on that first attempt. If he's stuck in this situation where he's like pushing Alonzo Menifield up against the cage, puts his head a little bit too low, and we see Menifield kind of rock some of those Travis Brown style elbows, it could be a short night for Devin Clark. So I can't trust the chin on Devin Clark. He does have decent value at plus 180, but man, that chin, like, it's too suspect for me to even touch him at this point. And Alonzo Menifield is probably top 5 power punchers in this division. So it's too scary of a fight. Again, if Menifield's not able to land that punch or that finishing strike, it's going to be a long night for him. But if Devin Clark, doesn't really mind his P's and Q's when he's closing the distance or even going for takedowns, he's going to be laying out cold as well too. So this fight's a total pass for me. I'm going to side with Alonzo Menifield as the pick here. That's kind of a square-ish pick because you're just banking on the guy to land that knockout punch. But given the circumstances that we have here, I got to go with Alonzo Menifield by knockout first round. But yeah, total pass. Just stay away from this fight. I'm not even going to bother parlaying Alonzo Menifield either in my Hail Mary parlay. So Menifield first round KO, but just stay the fuck away from this fight. Jussier Formiga versus Alex Perez. This fight is currently lined at minus 130 for Alex Perez, plus 110 for Jussier Formiga, and I'm super intrigued to see how this fight plays out. So Jussier Formiga is coming off a decision loss to Brandon Moreno last time around, and the fact that it wasn't a split decision compared to a unanimous decision, a lot of people are just writing that off initially, thinking that Moreno definitely deserved that. But if you actually go into the MMA decisions page, you see that the majority of fans actually scored that fight for Jussier Formiga. It's weird how they actually have it split up. Like, you'll see the round by round percentages fan scoring, but then they'll have the total fan scoring, and the total fan scoring has 29-28. I think it was like 40% of people had it for Formiga, which was the top score. Super close fight. Rounds 1 and 3 were probably the closest. Definitely Formiga in that third round. That first round is the one that you gotta really consider. But regardless, I think that Formiga isn't completely shot yet, and I think that's the narrative that's going on out there. He's 35 years old. Alex Perez, on the other hand, is 28, so he's a little bit younger. He has a lot of fight experience, though, for a 28-year-old. Perez is coming into this fight with 28 fights under his belt. Formiga is closer to the 30 mark, so they both have relatively the same amount of experience. They also have a similarity in the fact that they both like to get fights to the ground to be able to implement their game and their style. The majority of Alex Perez's fights find themselves on the mat, besides the Jose Torres fight, where he was just able to quickly starch Torres in that fight. But pretty often Perez is looking to get this fight to the ground. Obviously, it was really tough for him to get the fight where he wanted against Joseph Benavidez, and Benavidez was able to hurt him numerous amounts of times and then finally get the finish over him, probably twice in one fight as well, too. The Mark De La Rosa fight, that was a fight where you would consider, okay, this is where we're going to see Perez's top game challenged a little bit. De La Rosa is primarily a jiu-jitsu fighter. That's where his bread and butter is, but he just isn't active enough off of his back. He seemed a little bit too content off of his back, whereas Jussier Formiga, in my opinion, is going to be working for sweeps. He's going to be working for submissions. He's going to be working for reversals. It's kind of similar to like the Tyron Woodley fight against Gilbert Burns. You don't know if the wrestler is going to go out there and try to strike and stay away from the jiu-jitsu of a high-level jiu-jitsu player like Gilbert Burns, or in this situation, Jussier Formiga. I think that Perez is going to be forced to grapple here. He can strike. I think his striking is decent. He has decent enough leg kicks as well too. But Formiga has that type of striking style where he doesn't really care about getting taken down. Like it's the Damian Maia approach, the Sergio Moraes approach, the Gilbert Burns approach. Just throw pretty much any and everything you want on the feet and don't even worry about getting taken down, because if you get taken down, that's kind of your world. I think that Formiga is content with that. And I don't think he necessarily needs to get a takedown here. He has decent takedowns, especially for a guy that's primarily a jiu-jitsu player. But I think he can get like those weird like back take, like his back taking ability is probably one of the best in the game. It's ridiculous how quickly he's able to get the back. So I think like it could be almost like a Kron Gracie versus Alex Caceres type thing, where he just like latches onto the back and then kind of drags him to the ground and tries to get it to his realm that way. But again, I'm intrigued by what Perez's approach is going to be here. Is he just going to try to keep it on the feet? Is he going to try to fuck around with the guard of Jussier Formiga? But with that said, when when your strength is the other person's strength, you got to go with the dog here. Especially with a guy as experienced as Jussier Formiga, who's super high level with his jiu-jitsu. I find it hard to think that Perez is just going to be able to lay on him for 3 straight rounds or outstrike him for 3 straight rounds. I don't think that's pretty credible, especially for a guy that's the favorite in this fight. Formiga's striking has always been improving. It's ever improving. The Brandon Moreno fight was just so weird for him because Moreno is such an awkward and unorthodox fighter. Great jiu-jitsu, great scramble ability as well too. And I don't think that Perez has that scramble ability that the Morenos have, that the Benavidez's have, and that Formiga possesses as well too. So I like the dog here. I like Formiga at that plus 110 line. I can get him at plus 150 at one of my books as well too. It seems like there's a lot of Alex Perez love going on out there, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not completely writing Formiga off at this time. 35 is a little bit up there in age, but I think that he still has enough, and we saw it in that Moreno fight, that he can still get sweeps. He can still quickly go for the back. His back takes are insane, and his cardio was up there too, was able to get that full mount in the last minute or so of that fight and ride it out there. But yeah, I think that Perez is going to have his hands full here, and I really, really like Formiga. So I don't know if Formiga would necessarily get the finish, but I think that he'll be able to control the grappling exchanges once it hits the ground. But yeah, I would be very surprised if Alex Perez actually tries to keep this fight on the feet, as I don't think he's the most comfortable there compared to how he is when he's actually, on top of his opponents, implementing his wrestling. So this will be the first time we'll see him fight a legitimate high-level black belt guy, at least in the UFC. I don't trust his top position here. I think that Formiga would be the better grappler, or at least a better jiu-jitsu player. And we could see either Formiga get like a second round submission, or I could see him just, riding this out from the top. Again, you know what? I'm going to say second round rear naked choke for Formiga. Yeah, I like him to win this. I like him at dog money as well too, and he may even be a play as well. So look out for that. But I'm going to take Jussier Formiga to win this fight by second round submission. Maki Pitolo versus Charles Byrd. Maki Pitolo coming in as an underdog in this fight at plus 150, minus 170 for Charles Byrd. I'm very intrigued to see how this fight goes, strictly due to the fact that Callan Potter sprung off a pretty big upset on Maki Pitolo at UFC 243 way back in October. A couple things going into that fight. You got to think that there's a little bit of nerves going in for Maki Pitolo. Coming off the Contender Series, and yeah, he has fought for Bellator in the past, but he had that fight in Bellator in Hawaii, which is where he's from. But in this fight against Callan Potter, he comes into enemy territory, into a huge stadium. You got the entire Australian crowd cheering against you. That's got to play a little bit of mental warfare for yourself. And then he goes in there, lands some huge shots against Callan Potter, and is just not able to put the guy out. He's landing bombs, like the cleanest shots that you could possibly land, and he's landed on people before, and they've gone out. Unfortunately for Callan Potter. Unfortunately for Maki Pitolo, Callan Potter is just able to eat shots and really, just push the pace and then eventually implement his own game plan. We saw Maki Pitolo gas in that fight, and that kind of leads you to believe that he may have gas tank issues, but you got to, take into consideration the fact that this guy's throwing heavy bombs and landing cleanly too, yet this guy's still coming forward and still going for takedowns and still making it a very difficult fight. So I'm not completely writing off the fact that Maki Pitolo has a bad gas tank. We did see him go 5 hard rounds against Cassius Kane in his Victory FC fight. That was a fight that it was a title fight. He came in and missed weight by about 2 pounds. So even though he came out victorious in that fight, he did not get to, grab that Victory FC strap. He did come back in the rematch about 5 months later to fight the same guy and got knocked out in the 5 seconds into the second round. Especially in that first round too, he was getting rocked a lot too, so that was very concerning. And then in the Dakota Cochran fight, which was the one after that, had Cochran's back for a while, was not able to get the rear naked choke finish, and then eventually got guillotined with 2 seconds left in the second round. So not a good look for him there. He comes onto the Contender Series. And lands beautiful shots to the body against Justin Sumter. One of the craziest finishes I've ever seen. At least punches to the body, just ripping left hook straight to the body, makes Sumter crumple, and then he eventually finishes that fight with some ground and pound. He has great hands, good takedowns when he needs to get the takedowns, as we saw in the Cassius Kane fight and even in the Dakota Cochran fight. But I think that his primary game plan is normally to go out there and knock out his opponent. With Charles Byrd is coming off of 2 TKO losses. Darren Stewart landed beautiful shots up against the cage and was able to finish him. A beautiful right elbow that actually planted Charles Byrd on his face, and then that was the end of his night there. And then Edmund Shabazian, defending a takedown and then lands those Travis Brown style elbows to finally put Charles Byrd out. Only in 38 seconds. It wasn't that long of a fight, but I'm not completely counting out Charles Byrd's chin. He's very well trained as well too. He's training over at Fortis MMA with Saif Saud. So they're coming in with a proper game plan, and he's gonna have to stand in front of Maki Pitolo a little bit here. But it's pretty evident by watching the tape here that he's gonna try getting the fight to the ground and then try getting some sort of submission. We've seen Pitolo again in that Callan Potter fight. When he's not able to knock his opponent out, he really starts sucking wind and he gives up takedowns quite easily. So if he's not able to put Charles Byrd out in that first round or so, Byrd's going to be going for those takedowns early and often, try to wear out Maki Pitolo and then go for the finish. I'm kind of siding with the grappler here, even though we've seen him get knocked out in his last 2 fights. I'm not completely writing his chin off, unless Coconut Bombs goes out there and lands a crazy bomb. I could see Charles Byrd grinding him against the cage, getting this fight to the ground, and I don't mind him at the money that he's at right now. -170 is not that bad of a line. I believe that we'll see a little bit of Maki Pitolo money start to come in as well, so I'm going to hold off. But I really like Charles Byrd in this spot. I wasn't expecting to really have a play going into this fight, but I really like Charles Byrd. I love his efficiency in terms of getting fights to the ground and really making use of his time down there. I think he's going to be able to keep Pitolo down, especially if this fight gets past the first round. I could definitely see Byrd getting him down, making it very difficult for Pitolo to get back up, and we could possibly see a Byrd submission victory here. We've seen Pitolo obviously get submitted in the past, most notably Dakota Cochran via guillotine choke, and that's from, in my opinion, Pitolo kind of gassing out from trying to get the finish of the rear naked choke on Cochran. I like Byrd here. I believe he has a little bit of power on the feet. He's good enough on the feet to hang around, but then we obviously know that he's going to want to get this fight to the ground. I think Darren Stewart has better takedown defense than Maki Pitolo. And again, the gas tank issues. That's the main thing about Pitolo. In that 5-round fight that he had against Cassius Kane, he was able to go all 5 rounds because he was able to get his opponent down and then kind of rest on top while landing shots every now and then, so he wasn't really forced to work as much. Obviously, it's a little bit exhausting to hold an opponent down, but you get to rest a little bit more when you're on top of an opponent rather than trying to defend your hand, or rather than trying to have good striking defense. That's going to deteriorate. I don't know why I can't speak right now. That's going to deteriorate a lot more than it will if you're on the ground. So I think that Byrd will be able to weather any storms that coconut bombs try to throw at him in that first round, but he will be able to get Pitolo down. He will be able to sink in either a submission or at least grind this fight out for 3 rounds. Either way, I like Charles Byrd here. I don't mind the -170 price tag on him, to be honest. But again, I will wait this week out a little bit longer and see if we can get a better line on Charles Byrd, but I definitely like him. I think I'm going to take Charles Byrd to win this fight by 2nd round submission. Brian Kelleher versus Cody Stamann. This is a quick fight, or a quick turnaround for Brian Kelleher here, who had just knocked out Hunter Azure way back at UFC 249. Big win for him there. I believe it was the Wednesday event, whatever it was, the Smith versus Teixeira event. So this is a very quick turnaround for him. Didn't take too much damage in that Hunter Azure fight. And I think this is similar to the Hunter fight. However, I feel like Cody is a much more experienced, much better cardio, much better wrestling, much better fight IQ as well, and again, much better striking too than Hunter Azure. I think that what we saw in the Hunter Azure fight was that Hunter seemed to fall a little bit too in love with the striking, and I feel like his pacing and his cardio for that type of fight was not up to par with Brian Kelleher, who much prefers this fight to be on the feet. Kelleher looked in way better shape than Hunter come that 2nd round, and I think that just the fact that Hunter wasn't used to that type of fight, he's used to getting fighters to the ground early and often, and I think that really was a contributing factor as to why he was as tired as he was in that 2nd round, and his striking defense just wasn't there. Brian Kelleher was able to land a beautiful lead left hook, drop Hunter Azure, and finish him in that fight. However, in this fight against Cody Stamann, I think we see Stamann with a little bit better of a gas tank than Hunter, especially if this fight plays out in the striking realm for a little bit longer than it should. But I think that Cody has better timing and a better ability to mix his wrestling in with his striking, and using that MMA wrestling per se to be able to get the fight to the ground into a realm where he's able to not completely exert himself or not completely gas himself and kind of ride out on top of Brian Kelleher. I'll give it up to Brian Kelleher. A big win against Hunter Azure. Completely busted my lock of the night play that night, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it 2 times in a row. I really like Cody Stamann here. Again, I like his movement. This fight being at 45 as well too, he's going to be able to have a slightly better cardio. He's going to be even stronger. He looks like the physically much stronger guy here too. So I think it will be a little bit easier for him to implement his wrestling and actually get this fight to the ground. Obviously, the only only thing that he needs to worry about on his entries is his neck. And I did see, against Song Yadong, when there were opportunities for him to get this fight to the ground and he grappled up against him, he raises his head to try to slam Song Yadong, and that's kind of a dangerous position where Brian Kelleher may look to actually like snatch up a guillotine choke. However, I think that Cody Stamann's too smart for that. I don't think that we'll see Cody Stamann get snatched up with a guillotine choke. That's got to be like game plan numero uno whenever you're going in against Brian Kelleher and you're a wrestler. So I think that we'll see Cody Stamann actually be able to, we saw him take some shots from Song Yadong, and then we saw him eventually wear on him and eventually get this fight to the ground and ride out top position like that. I think we'll see a little bit more of a resistance from Brian Kelleher, but eventually Cody Stamann will eventually, get this fight to the ground and work his game the way he does. Again, I am way more confident in Cody Stamann than I am Hunter Azure. From the stand up to the wrestling to the cardio as well too. I think that Cody could absolutely outpace a Hunter Azure, and then he'll be able to do that to Brian Kelleher here too. So there's two paths to victory for Brian Kelleher, because he's not going to win a decision here. He needs to either knock out Cody Stamann or get the guillotine choke. I don't see either of those happening here against Cody Stamann, who in my opinion has a decent chin. Again, moves well, great head movement, uses that karate style every now and then to land some kicks, beautiful kicks too. I forgot which fight it was, the Alejandro Perez fight. We saw numerous times where he kicks the lead leg of Alejandro Perez. Perez switches stances, and then we see Cody Stamann like kind of teep the knee of Alejandro Perez. I love small things like that just because it keeps Cody Stamann active. It keeps him very aware, and that's one thing that I like about Cody as well too. In between, when he's talking to his corner in between rounds, like he's legit talking to them. He's taking the time to get his gas back, but he's also like conversing with them, showing that he's actually fully aware and fully in the moment of what he's doing, and very present to be able to implement what he needs to for the following round. So again, I like Cody Stamann here. I think he's going to get the takedown early and often. He's roughly around minus 265. I'm absolutely certain that we'll see some Brian Kelleher money come in throughout this week, so I'm going to keep an eye on that. But I like Cody Stamann here. Possible lock of the night play. Last week I kind of fucked up, man. I should have taken that Casey Kenny line, even if it was minus 270. I felt he was going to go in there and absolutely demolish Louis Smolka. I expect Cody Stamann to kind of do the same thing here. Maybe not finish Kelleher, but probably like take him to a decision. But I think that it would be the first 2.5 minutes or so are going to be a little bit sketchy, but after that, I think that Cody Stamann will be able to implement his game, get the takedowns, even in the second round, third round, and then ride out Kelleher in that fashion. So I'm taking Stamann to win this fight by decision, I may be betting the juicy line here. I think we'll even see the minus 250, so I'll keep my eye out for that. But I do like Cody Stamann to win this fight by decision. Gerald Meerschaert versus Ian Heinisch. The line on this is currently minus 130 for Ian Heinisch, plus 110 for Gerald Meerschaert. This fight's kind of tough to get a read on. So let's start off with Ian Heinisch. This guy seems to have cardio for days, but in turn it seems to not really translate with his activity. If we remember the Derek Brunson fight and the Omari Akhmedov fights, he is bouncing around and moving a lot in front of these guys, but he's not really throwing anything, and he's not really able to get his wrestling off, which is how he normally grinds out most of his opponents against guys like Omari and Derek, who are great wrestlers themselves. I'm not sure how much he's going to want to engage in the grappling and the wrestling against Gerald Meerschaert here, who's also quite, a very tough grappler, great jiu-jitsu, he's very gritty. It seems like he has gas tank issues every now and then, but he's still there in that third round when people are counting him out. The under 2.5 is something that I considered. Plus 160 is kind of interesting. We could see maybe Ian really put that pace on Gerald, finally start putting his punches together, kind of overwhelm Gerald, and maybe get a TKO, late second round, early third round. Or we could see Gerald Meerschaert kind of hurt Ian Heinisch in that first round, and get him to the ground and then eventually snatch up a submission. But to be honest, I'm not confident on either guy here, and the price tag is pretty good on both sides, in my opinion. I just don't know which side I trust a little bit more. Gerald Meerschaert is he's just not the fastest either. That's one thing that's kind of concerning. I think Heinisch will have the speed advantage here. He should be able to hit Meerschaert and get in and out. But Meerschaert, again, very tough and gritty guy, uses his jab very long, has decent boxing. It's definitely been, it was definitely showing true in that Duran Win fight where he was able to stun Win before he was able to finally get that rear naked choke finish. But I'm not sure if he's going to be as successful against Ian Heinisch here, who obviously isn't 5'6". So, man, it's so tough to get a read here. I'm gonna lean on the Ian Heinisch side just due to the fact that I like guys with slightly better cardio. My only concern is here gonna be his output. Is he gonna leg kick Gerald Meerschaert? Is he gonna let his hands go later on in this fight? Yeah, I like Heinisch. His resiliency in grappling situations is very impressive too. The way that he was able to stay out of the submissions of ACJ and Granby roll out of all these positions is very, very impressive. I'm a big believer in his submission defense, so I think it'll be harder for GM3 to really pull off a submission here. Again, outside of rocking Heinisch early and then going for a sub, it's going to be tough for him to get that. I like Heinisch here. I don't think I'll be playing him. Minus 130 is a decent line, but again, just so tough to trust at this point. I believe I had him as a lock of the night play against Derek Brunson. Not 100% sure about that. I may have just played him straight as well too. Not as big as lock of the night play, but yeah, that fight really demoralized me in terms of the potential I thought I had or he had. And then obviously the Omari Akhmedov fight was another one where you thought that, okay, this guy has great cardio. He should be able to outwork and outpace Omari to go on for at least a decision or get a late finish. He wasn't even able to do that, so that was quite concerning. So hopefully here he's finally learned his lesson where he's going to be, finally letting his hands go a little bit more, letting his kicks go, just being the more active fighter here. As long as he doesn't get clipped or anything by Gerald Meerschaert, he should be able to get in and out without really taking too much significant damage. So I really like Ian Heinisch here, but again, just not enough to actually place the bet. So I'll go with Ian Heinisch to win this fight by third round TKO after he's going to out-cardio and outpace Gerald Meerschaert. Alex Caceres versus Chase Hooper. Weird fight here. Chase Hooper is still super freaking young. A lot of people seem to be jumping on his bandwagon here. His line is currently at minus 165, plus 145 for Alex Caceres. This line actually opened at a pick'em, and we have seen it gradually move down to a minus 165 for Chase Hooper. So let's start off with that young kid. He's 9-0-1, has one draw on his record from his fourth last fight on CFFC. I like the kid. He has a lot of charisma. He has a lot of personality. He's easily marketable as well too. Does a great job on social media. I think the ceiling is very high for this kid. However, I think this is a tough matchup for him against Alex Caceres. Caceres is a very, very tough vet, and I mean that with the pun because he was on The Ultimate Fighter. I believe it was the George St. Pierre and Josh Koscheck series. That was way back in the day. But he's been around the block. He's fought a ton of guys, and this is going to be a very stiff test for Chase Hooper. So we know it's pretty evident. This kid wants to get the fight to the ground. He wants to implement his jiu-jitsu. We did see him kind of mess around with the feet and try to implement his striking in that LaShawn Alcox fight, and he paid for it dearly in that third round. I believe it was at the end of the first or second round as well, too, where he ate a big shot pretty much right at the buzzer, but he's still a work in progress. He's working with Jeff Hoagland on those guys, who is also a former UFC vet. He has a ton of work to do, in my opinion. His jiu-jitsu, obviously, he's been doing it since he was 4 or 5 years old, which is insane, so he has a ton of experience there. But his striking still looks a little bit awkward. His striking defense isn't the best. He's kind of lucky that he's long and lanky, so he's able to kind of use his length a little bit more. Obviously, again, that's still another work in progress. One thing that I do find is that he finds himself in a lot of these submission situations where he's close to locking up a choke or an armbar or something like that, but it just doesn't seem like he has the strength to really complete those. Daniel Tamer was able to get out of a rear naked choke. Kanan Kauai, which was the which was the Contender Series fight that he had back in 2018. He had plenty of finishing opportunities, plenty of times where he had the back and a couple of submissions locked in, but was just not able to finish it. We saw whenever there was a rear naked choke, Kanan was able to peel the hands down and save himself from that. So it shows that if there is somebody with a little bit of strength, they should be able to peel away Chase Hooper's hands. I don't think the minus 165 line is a justifiable line for this kid. I think he still has a lot of learning to do. And again, I think he has a ton of potential, but Alex Caceres is a very tough out. Let's go over and look over at Alex Caceres' resume. He's had a lot of on and offs. In his last 5, he's 3-2. But one fight that I kind of looked at, I know it's a little bit of a while ago. It's actually getting close to damn near the 4-year anniversary of this fight. But the Cole Miller fight, another lanky guy, super high-level jiu-jitsu, black belt under Ricardo Laborio. He had Caceres in some bad spots, and Caceres did a really good job with his submission defense, peeling hands down for rear naked chokes, spinning out of arm bars. Really, really, he knows what he's doing on the ground. He's very well trained as well, too, over at the MMA lab with Benson Henderson and John Crouch and those guys. So he knows what he's doing on the ground. And I don't know if Chase Hooper is the one that's going to actually be able to submit him. I think we'll see Caceres have a ton of success on the feet. He's a little bit long too. He's going to be giving up a little bit of size here, 5'10" compared to the 6'1" of Chase Hooper. But I think the slight strength advantage that Caceres will have here will allow him to stay out of any submissions that Chase Hooper tries to lock in or anything like that. Kron Gracie obviously was able to get the back of Alex Caceres and promptly submit him there. But I don't think Chase Hooper will be capable of that type of jiu-jitsu or that type of strength as well, too. Caceres was fighting that choke all the way up until the point that the arm was finally under his chin, but Kron was finally able to get that tap there. But he defended really good chokes again from Cole Miller, from even Steven Peterson himself too, who has a ton of submission victories under his belt as well. So I think it really comes down to the strength here. I think Chase still needs to grow a little bit. I think he still needs to put on a little bit of muscle. Not saying that he needs to go out there and look like freaking Uberim or anything like that, but he still needs to allow the strength to get in there so that he can start choking out these older guys that have a little bit more strength than him. Jiu-jitsu is the one art that you don't really need to be the strongest guy to be able to pull off submissions, but at a certain point, strength does come into play. And Caceres isn't like the strongest guy out there, but we do know he is going to have the strength advantage here. It's hard to cap in terms of the improvements that we're going to see from Chase Hooper from fight to fight. So he may come out here looking, a little bit longer, or not longer, but stronger and bigger. But again, I still like Caceres on the feet. I think he's just more refined on the feet. He moves very well. The fact that he was able to beat Steven Peterson pretty much with one hand for 2 rounds of that fight is very impressive. And I think that obviously Steven Peterson has a better striking than Chase Hooper too. Minus 165, do not bet Chase Hooper here. If you can get a closer line, then maybe I think there's a little bit of value on him. But I think the value here lays on Alex Caceres. And at plus 145, I probably would pull the trigger. I'm not 100% sure yet. But again, I'm looking at the rest of the card and seeing where I can place my money. And that's already, Rocco Martin is the live dog in my opinion. And I think that Alex Caceres, this might be a line that actually gets better and better. I think a lot of people are going to look at that Kron Gracie fight and be like, look, fucking Caceres got tapped out just 2 fights ago. Or even, look, Steven Peterson was able to get him down, get his back, and he should probably, if Steven Peterson got his back, Chase Hooper's probably going to get his back too. That's the way some people might think. And if you go into this with that thought process, you're overlooking the fact that we've seen Chase Hooper, get into positions where he's, had submissions sunk in, but the lack of strength has not allowed it to go to completion. So I like Caceres here. Again, better on the feet, good enough on the ground that he should be able to stay out of any crazy subs. But I like Caceres here, man. I'll look to see if I'm actually going to bet it, not 100%, but I'm going to go with Caceres by decision. And this would be a good learning lesson for Chase Hooper, as I believe he does have a ton of talent. He's still super young. I do want to confirm his age. I believe he's 20. Yeah, he's 20. He'll be 21 in September. But yeah, it's still a lot of growing and learning for this kid to do. But I'm very, very excited to see what he brings to the table in terms of a jiu-jitsu background, especially as long as he's been doing it, from the age that he's been doing it. I'm excited to see what he has to bring in the future, but this is a tough fight for him and Alex Caceres, so I'm going to be taking Caceres by decision. Eddie Wineland versus Sugar Sean O'Malley. This fight's a super fun fight. I can't wait for this one. Minus 485 for Sean O'Malley, plus 385 for Eddie Wineland, the vet. The line that I'm most intrigued by in this fight is the over 1.5. We got minus 150 on that, plus 130 on the under 1.5. But I feel like this fight will have a bit of a feeling out process in it. You know, Sean O'Malley was pretty much just given a softball in his return after all of his USADA shit that he had to deal with in the past. But he came in against Jose Alberto Quinones at UFC 248 back in March and just put on an absolute clinic. You know, he seemed very calm and composed, but he was still able to dispatch Jose Quinones within 2 minutes of that fight. You know, Jose is not the most comfortable on the feet. For God's sakes, the guy has jiu-jitsu tattooed on his chest. So if you don't know what his game plan is going to be or what he wants to do, you got to be pretty fucking blind. But, Sean O'Malley was able to keep him at range with kicks. He moved very well, too. Whenever there was any, whenever Sean O'Malley had his back against the cage or close to that danger zone and that warning track, he did a good job of, faking Quinones out and getting out of the way. Eddie Wineland, on the other hand, very heavy power puncher. He's a vet in the game, was one of the first ever WEC champs. He's coming off a big win over Grigory Popov way back in June. He was actually scheduled to fight Marlon Vera in March, and then obviously the whole COVID shit happened. But here he is against Sean O'Malley. He has the opportunity to derail a hype train here. Similar hype train to Chase Hooper, in my opinion, but I feel like Sean O'Malley is a little bit more warranted, and his skills are a little bit tighter. And it's very encouraging and very positive that we see Sean O'Malley going out there and competing in these things like quintet and these other grappling matches, strictly to see him, working on the weaknesses in his game. It's obvious from watching his fighting style that he wants to go out there and try to knock you out, try to be flashy with it. And I am impressed. I like the kid. I think he has a ton of talent. This is a stiff test against Eddie Wineland, who hits very, very hard. Luckily for Sean O'Malley, this is a fight where his movement, his range, and his kicking should allow him to have a lot of success here. Eddie Wineland winds up and just throws pretty much everything into all of his shots, and it's pretty easy to be able to see what's coming, be a little bit... Eddie Wineland does telegraph his shots a little bit. Eddie Wineland starting at 5'7". We got 5'11" for Sugar Sean O'Malley, 72-inch reach compared to the 69-inch reach. So with O'Malley having, that 4-inch reach advantage roughly, or 4-inch height advantage roughly, that should help in his ability to keep this fight, or at least to keep Eddie Wineland on the outside. The reason I like the over 1.5 here is because I don't think that Sean O'Malley is going to try to go out there and go crazy looking for the finish like he did against Jose Quinones. I think he's going to respect the power of Eddie Wineland. We could see him dancing around a little bit more, throwing more kicks to the leg, try to set up the kicks to the body and the kicks to the head. But I see him taking a delicate approach in this fight. The minus 150 is not that bad of a line. To be honest, I thought they would have actually put it at 2.5. If that was the case, the under in that aspect probably would have been a nice play. But I like the over 1.5 in this fight. I do think O'Malley will get this done. I think he just, being the younger guy, being the more versatile guy, very rarely do we see Eddie Wineland actually throw kicks. He's mainly, he's all about his hands. We did see him try to attempt a couple takedowns against Grigory Popov. Popov was able to get up pretty much immediately. I highly doubt that we see a grapple-heavy approach from Eddie Wineland here. I think he's still going to just go out there and try to take the kid's head off. I think he's going to feel very disrespected as well by the betting line here, pretty much being a 3.5 to 1 favor or underdog. Sorry, let me just confirm that line one more time. Yeah, plus 385. I think he's going to take that as a spit in the face, and he's going to try to go out there and just absolutely murk Sean O'Malley by trying to knock him out or something like that. And that's just going to play into O'Malley's game. So I see, again, O'Malley's probably going to take his time here, work the outside, and then eventually start to open up the rest of his game, which is why I like the over 1.5. So I am taking O'Malley. I think he's parlay worthy. Minus 485 is a little bit steep, but I think it is worthy there. However, if you want to make a straight play on this, I don't think Eddie Wineland's worth the underdog money, but I do think the over 1.5 here is very, very good. So I'll take O'Malley to win this fight by a third round TKO, probably even a decision. Eddie Wineland, you know what? I would say decision. Eddie Wineland's quite durable. He hasn't been finished since Johnny Eduardo way back in 2014. It's been a long time since he's been finished. And then before that, obviously, he got finished by Hendon Barao back in 2013 when he fought for the title. But I like Sean O'Malley here. I'm going to take him to win by a decision. But check out that over 1.5 because I think there's a little bit of value there. Anthony Rocco Martin versus Neil Magny. Very intriguing fight we got here. Minus 155 for Neil Magny, plus 135 for Anthony Rocco Martin. So let's start off with Neil Magny. Coming off a good victory over Li Jingliang last time around. I did have a dog of the night play on him, and I got him around that plus 150 mark. I was very happy with the performance that he put on there. I just think a lot of people at that time were overestimating the talent and skill level of Li Jingliang. I still think that Li is a good fighter. I just think that people were completely, too high on him and also discrediting Neil Magny too much, despite his, complete annihilation that he suffered against Santiago Ponzinibbio the fight before that. And yeah, it was a pretty lengthy layoff that he had after that Ponzinibbio fight, but he came back very rejuvenated, reinvigorated, and put on a great performance against Li Jingliang. The problem here, though, was that he didn't, have to put up with much resistance from Li Jingliang other than having to worry about big power punches coming to the head. Li's game isn't really flexible outside of that. He's good at striking, and once he gets into his groove and he's able to land big shots, he continues to put it on and gain more confidence throughout the fight. He just wasn't able to do that here against Neil Magny, which is why Magny was able to take over. Magny got into his groove. We saw him kind of dancing around, landing beautiful jabs. His footwork was beautiful, and he looked very powerful in there too. He's always been a big guy, standing 6'3" with an 81-inch reach. One of the bigger guys for the welterweight division, but he's quite skinny. His legs are like toothpicks almost. And I think anybody with a good leg kick, as we saw with Santiago Ponzinibbio, could definitely give him troubles. And that's what I think we kind of get with Anthony Rocco Martin here. Martin had that setback to Damian Maia, which isn't anything to really worry about. Before that, he had 4 straight victories over Keita Nakamura, Ryan LaFleur, Jake Matthews, and Sergio Moraes, and then lost to Maia, and then came back and won had a good performance against Ramazan Emeev, who, in my opinion, is probably one of the more efficient and better fighters out there. So to see Rocco Martin go out there and put on that type of performance against Emeev, I was very, very impressed. Martin has pretty good hands, a good sense of distance. Great leg kicks as well too, which I believe is going to be the X factor here. If he's able to work that leg early and often for Magny, I think Magny is going to be limping a little bit, just like he was in that Santiago Ponzinibbio fight. Li just does not throw as many leg kicks as Rocco, and Rocco knows, and I'm sure he saw it in that Santiago fight, that if you establish that leg kick early and often, you're going to have success against Neil Magny moving forward. And I think that that's what he's going to do. It's pretty much what he did in that Sergio Moraes fight. Beat up that front leg, really took the power and the pop off of those crazy Hail Mary overhands that Sergio Moraes likes to throw, and also takes the pop off the potential takedown threat. Neil Magny is a strong guy. I don't think he's going to want to get this fight to the ground. I think he's going to try to, utilize his footwork and utilize his head movement, good jabs again, decent striking, good output, and great cardio. But the thing with Rocco is, Rocco doesn't have the worst cardio. He's pretty good. His output is decent. But again, leg kicks. If he's able to establish that, get that calf kick going, it's going to be a long night for Neil Magny, and that will definitely open up the hands and kicking opportunities for Anthony Rocco Martin once he establishes those leg kicks. And, you'd have to be a dummy not to realize that that's kind of a glaring, flaw in Neil Magny's game. And Magny does move well, and he switches stances decently, but again, he will leave that leg out there for you to kick, and I think that Rocco Martin is going to look to kick the shit out of that leg. Again, coming from a great camp with American Top Team, great game planning there too. People can say what they want in terms of seeing improvements from Neil Magny in his last fight, but he's always been good. He's always had skill. He's always had talent. It's just that Santiago Ponzinibbio fight, he just looked horrible. Ponzinibbio was just a very bad stylistic matchup for him. So I definitely like Anthony Rocco Martin to win here. I'm going to take him by decision, and I think he's definitely worth a play at the dog money that he's at. So I might be making a bet on him closer to fight day. But that plus 135 is very, very intriguing. Plus 140 at a couple places too, so it's definitely worth a shot there. But I like Rocco Martin to win here by decision, and it's all depending on that leg kick. If he gets that going, cash that bet, baby. Aljamain Sterling versus Cory Sandhagen. Far and away, this is the fight that I'm most intrigued by on this card, and the odds obviously reflect that. And a lot of people feel the same way. It's at even money, minus 110 at most places. Other places, you'll see that Cory Sandhagen is the very slight underdog, and I'm not totally sure why. So let's get into Cory Sandhagen right off the bat. Coming into tape, I actually thought I'd be going with Aljamain Sterling. But after running the tape a little bit, man, I'm even more and more impressed by Cory Sandhagen with every outing that he has. Now, first and foremost, he hasn't really fought a guy like Aljamain Sterling. Like, the closest you'll get is a guy like Yuri Alcantara and Mario Bautista, but those guys are like, far and away, very, very, still very different from what Aljamain Sterling brings to the cage. I'm talking about guys that are like lanky-ish, have decent jiu-jitsu. Aljamain Sterling, way better jiu-jitsu than those guys, way better wrestling, way stronger, longer, more unorthodox with his striking too, compared to Alcantara and Bautista, that is. But man, Cory Sandhagen, every time he steps into the cage, there's always something more and more that we see from him that continues to impress me. That Alcantara fight was crazy. He got hurt early, was able to survive an arm triangle as well as an arm bar as well. So that was very impressive. And then come back in that same round and lay a beating on Alcantara. And you could arguably have stopped that fight too. And then he ends up finishing that fight 1 minute into the next round. The Assuncao fight was really his coming out party, but in a sense, Assuncao is one of the top guys, and it's kind of mind blowing to me that actually Assuncao and Garbrandt are co-mating over this, as this is probably the number one contender fight in most people's eyes. But yeah, he looked really good in that fight. He kept Assuncao on the outside, and then even when Assuncao tried to implement the jiu-jitsu, Cory Sandhagen just seemed to be a step ahead of him pretty much the entire time. I love his movement. I love his exits whenever he's coming in to land a couple shots. He's always exiting on an angle. Very good footwork. His jiu-jitsu is ever improving. He's a brown belt at this point. He's probably a black belt, soon to be, especially if he's able to pull off a submission over Aljamain Sterling. Definitely a black belt at that point. His cardio is great. The guys that he's working with over at Team Elevation in Denver, those guys are nothing but positive for him. And the fact that they've had him since he was like, a very, very young kid. I believe his background is he tried playing basketball and then just wanted to do MMA to stay fit. And then he just eventually just stayed the course and just became such a phenomenal MMA fighter. His record is 12-1. He only had one loss way back against Jamal Emmers in a fight that, he probably could have won, but he was still quite young in his career. He's 28 at this point. Born in 92. It's so weird when I start seeing guys that are born before me, but then again, I'm closing in on 30 in about a year's time, so it is what it is there. But yeah, I love Cory Sandhagen here. Again, great fighting style, great movement, always seems a step ahead of his opponent. The only thing that's really concerning is the fact that Rafa was able to latch on to the back of Cory Sandhagen and try to drag him to the ground, and it seemed like you could almost get him to the ground, not with too much resistance, but once it got there, Cory really threw his jiu-jitsu cap on and was able to stay ahead of the game, just as I said earlier. So I'm not too worried if Aljamain Sterling gets this fight to the ground. So let's get over to Aljamain Sterling. He's coming off a victory over Pedro Munoz in a fight where Pedro just pretty much just walked him down the entire time. Was landing leg kicks at will, seemed to hurt Aljo a little bit later in the fight, but Aljo was still able to come out on the winning end. He was able to keep Pedro on the outside, land nice kicks, land nice jabs. Didn't really want to mess with the jiu-jitsu, so didn't even bother try taking the fight to the ground with too much urgency. Here with Cory Sandhagen, I think he's going to want to try to get a hold of Sandhagen. I think he might even take like the approach that he did in the Jimmy Rivera fight. And a lot of people can say, and Jimmy can say it himself too, that he's not feeling it that night. His exact words to his coaches in between rounds 2 and 3. It's tough to believe that though. You know what I mean? Like it's like the Kamaru Usman and Tyron Woodley thing. Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, same thing. There's certain guys that are able to just take a game plan and implement it against certain guys and throw them off their game. And Aljo's clear game plan there was to kind of clinch fuck Jimmy Rivera up against the cage, try to make it difficult for him to move, just really suck the wind out of him by squeezing him up against the cage. And he put in the work there for the beginning of that fight, and it paid off for the rest of the fight because he was able to keep Jimmy on the end there. Here, though, it's going to be tough for him to do the same thing to Cory Sandhagen, in my opinion. Cory Sandhagen is going to have roughly a 3 to 4 inch height advantage. The reach is going to be relatively the same, but I think that it's going to be harder for Aljo to really just keep him up against the cage and try to drain him that way. And even if he tries to take this fight to the ground, I'm a believer of Cory Sandhagen's jiu-jitsu. The kid's very crafty. Aljo, I'm still not 100% sold on his striking. He's very unorthodox on the feet, likes to throw a lot of spinning kicks, likes to throw a lot of teeps. His hands still need a little bit of work. He does well when he's fighting guys that are shorter and he's trying to just keep them at range. So he's able to kind of just paw out with his lead hand and then just bring that the power hand down the middle just to kind of keep them away. I think he's going to have trouble doing that here against Cory Sandhagen. This is the first time he's fought somebody that moves the way that Cory Sandhagen does. And I think that's going to be very tricky for him to get over. Obviously, with this whole COVID thing that's going on, he's not able to have his main coaches there either. He has Ray Longo and Matt Serra, who normally are in his coaches or are in his corners, but this time around it's just like a bunch of fighters that he's brought out to Vegas with him. I think Al Iaquinta is one of them as well too, so that is a bit of a con here for Aljo. He's so used to having the boisterous vocals of Ray Longo and Matt Serra in his corner. Here he's going to have to resort to Al Iaquinta a little bit more. And yeah, they can say what they want about, okay, they've covered the bases with their coaches beforehand, so they don't really have to worry about, they don't really have to worry about not getting the best corner advice. And I'm not sure how much they'll be able to text Al Iaquinta or anything in between rounds or during rounds or something and be like, hey, shore up these things. But that's definitely not as effective as actually being there in person. And I get it. They're erring on the side of caution by not coming out there. But I think it's a detriment for one of their star pupils who's in a very, very important fight here. A win here could easily secure a title shot for either guy. And I think that, Cory having his coaches there, and again, that's just a small factor in this fight, but I like Cory, man. I think the kid has a ton of potential. His cardio is off the chain, obviously training over in Colorado. I think it's just going to be hard for Aljo to really get a target, a set target on Cory Sandhagen the way he was able to against most of their opponents, because they're more stationary compared to what Cory's going to bring here. And I think with that, Cory's going to expose the striking of Aljamain Sterling. I think he's going to stay on his bicycle. I think he's going to continuously move, kick the leg, and then just have his enter, land a couple shots, exit on an angle, not really worry about getting too much damage. My only concern in this fight, and originally I was going to stay away from this fight, but man, it's that line on Cory Sandhagen is just too nice to pass up at this point. The only concern is if Aljo does overpower him. I do think that Aljo has a strength here. He is a very strong grappler. He's able to pretty much impose his will on most of his opponents. But I think just Cory's a little bit too crafty, a little bit too slick, especially when it comes to his jiu-jitsu, that he'll stay out of super bad positions against Aljamain Sterling. So I think the unorthodox nature of Aljamain Sterling's fighting approach may not work out here, because he's going to get his face boxed off by Cory Sandhagen here. Whenever he's going to try to just stay and try to gauge the distance with his lead hand, he's going to eat a shot right down the middle, and then he's not even going to know what hit him, because Cory Sandhagen is not going to be there to be hit. So I love Sandhagen here, a very slight underdog, but I'm liking him. I might go 1 to 1.5 units on the kid. Again, going into this fight, one, I thought that I wasn't going to bet it, and I thought I was going to pick Aljamain Sterling. And two, I thought I was going to pick Aljamain Sterling. Pretty simple. I pretty much covered both points in that first point. But regardless, that's why you do the tape study. That's why you do the actual research yourself. Don't listen to other people. Go in there, do your own work, watch the fights, look at the statistics, do what you got to do, and come to your own conclusion. And that's exactly what I did. Like, you can have a pre-search. I forgot who it was that actually gave me that term. But you do your pre-search, and you think you know who you're going to bet going into that fight. But then you come out on the other end, and once you have all the facts, statistics, and everything that you need to see, you make up your mind. And I've made up my mind. I like Cory Sandhagen. I'm going to take him to win this fight by decision. And I love the money that we're getting on him right now. So I'm gonna more than likely be taking that bet. So Cory Sandhagen to win this fight by decision. Cody Garbrandt versus Raphael Assuncao. This is probably the fight that I'm second most intrigued by, following the other bantamweight scrap on this fight. But we got minus 140 on Cody Garbrandt, plus 120 on Raphael Assuncao. Personally, I was hoping for a little bit of a better line on Cody Garbrandt, because I thought that this is a prime matchup for him to come back to and showcase that he's still one of the top guys in the game. He's only 28 years old, still very young, and he still has a lot of improvements to go through. Most of his career, he's been at Team Alpha Male, and as of now, he has switched over to Mark Henry part-time, as he just was flying back and forth and working with both camps. Unfortunately, due to this COVID thing, I think his time with Mark Henry was cut a little bit short. He did get some time in with him. It's not like he didn't work with him at all, but I believe he flew back to Sacramento to be with his kids, his kid and his wife, after this whole COVID thing went down. But I believe Mark will be in his corner, which is a good thing. And I feel like they have worked together quite well, and this is a perfect relationship. Like, Mark Henry is a mastermind when it comes to game planning for fighters, and to have a guy like Cody Garbrandt under your wing, you have so many tools at your disposal to really implement the game plan that you really want to put out there. Cody Garbrandt, we all know about him, heavy puncher, great footwork, but sometimes lets his emotions get the best of him. Obviously, in the TJ Dillashaw fights, they had a lot of bad blood going into those fights, so it seems like he was just a little bit too rattled by those things. It's weird though, because the Dominic Cruz fight, there was a lot of bad blood going into that fight too, but he was able to keep his composure and dance around Dominic Cruz and land some good shots throughout that fight, en route to dethroning the bantamweight champion, or the bantamweight king at that time. And then lastly, in his fight with Pedro Munoz, that was a fight where, it was going quite well for him, outside of the leg kicks that Pedro Munoz was landing pretty much at will. Who knows how much of an effect that would have had on Cody throughout the fight. But, he did besides that, he did quite well in terms of sticking and moving. And then there was that, ill-fated headbutt that happened against Pedro Munoz. Pedro got him down pretty much immediately. Cody was able to get up right away, and then we saw like the fire come out in Cody Garbrandt, where he just started swinging for the fences, completely threw technique and discipline out the window, and was just being a complete idiot, just winging shots, not even moving his head, pretty much keeping his head on the center line while he's trying to land the bigger shot. It was kind of like a dick swinging contest. Whoever was able to land the bigger shot would be the bigger man. Unfortunately for Cody, Pedro was the bigger man that night. He landed a good shot, dropped Cody, and really hurt him. And I feel like Cody's narrative that's around him right now is the fact that he has no chin or anything like that. I believe there is a bit of that, but it's also his stupidity at times. Again, just leaving his chin out there to be hit, not the best, especially when he lets his emotions get the best of him. The thing that brings me the most hope regarding the rest of his career is the fact that he was able to acknowledge that after the fight. He did acknowledge, saying, I think he sent out a couple tweets or even an Instagram post talking about how dumb his game plan was, or not even game plan, but how dumb he fought in terms of just letting his emotions get the best of him, thinking that the headbutt illegally landed, obviously, to the point that it hurt him, and then he just got pissed off about that and just wanted to finish the fight ASAP. He addressed those things, and the first step to recovery is accepting, pretty much accepting your faults, and he did that. And I'm not completely sold on the narrative that he's the stupidest guy out there. I feel like, again, working with a guy like Mark Henry and still staying faithful to his guys over at Team Alpha Male, we're going to see a really good Cody Garbrandt. And there is the little asterisk of this whole COVID thing, so he didn't really get the amount of time in what Mark Henry probably should have. But again, I'm happy with the fact that he was able to address his flaws and his faults, and I think that's only going to make him a better fighter. It's a good fight for him to come back to, just to jump right back into the thick of things. But Raphael Assuncao is no slouch himself. Raphael Assuncao is coming off a loss to Cory Sandhagen, who also fights earlier, and then before that he lost to Marlon Moraes. In those last two fights, we have seen Raphael Assuncao's chin tested. We've seen him get hurt. Cory Sandhagen showed massive amounts of confidence in that fight, where he, anytime he landed a good shot, whether it was to the body or to the head, he's like waving at Raphael like, "Hey, I got you." And I think that if Cody is able to find those openings too, he could put Raphael Assuncao on his butt. The play here, in my opinion, is probably the under 2.5. I think for the majority of this fight, we're going to see it take place on the feet. I think Raphael Assuncao is going to be very confident in his counter-striking game. He's going to let Cody come to him and then try to land a big bomb, and he's going to test the chin of Cody Garbrandt. So, again, another thing that Rafa could really implement is his leg kicks. He saw how effective it was when Cody fought. It's so weird. We got Cory and Cody. I'm just trying to differentiate the two as best as possible. I guess I might as well use their last names. But regardless, Rafa was able to see how effective the leg kicks from Pedro Munoz was. So maybe he should be able to implement that type of game plan as well. But Assuncao has made a living off of being a very efficient striker, a very good counter striker. That's how he was able to beat Rob Font. That's how he was able to beat Matthew Lopez. Very just calm, cool, collected, just waiting for his openings. And Cody's going to have to worry about that too. I like the under 2.5 here, to be honest. I think that there will be an opening for either guy. Plus 105 is not that bad of a line on a fight that two guys that are primarily strikers. Assuncao obviously has a black belt in his back pocket. Cody's looking like he's been working on his jiu-jitsu just to be on the safe side. But I think for the most part, this fight's going to stay on the feet. And I think we see an even better Cody Garbrandt here. If his chin issues are truly a thing of the past, and his work with Mark Henry has paid a little bit of dividends, we're going to see a guy that moves well again, times his entries and utilizes his power. I think that if he looks past the fact that he has power, it may be a detriment to him. Don't go out there and be a point fighter. Go out there and be that killer that you are, but just be very, very cautious about the power coming back, and I think he is. I think he's made the necessary changes. I know he's on a 3-fight losing streak, 2 of those to TJ Dillashaw, who at the time was on all the sauces. I like Cody here. Minus 140, a little bit too much for me to bet on him straight. If he got down to like the minus 120 mark, I would possibly think about making a bet on him. But I like the under 2.5, and I will wait fight week out and see if a little bit of Raphael Assuncao money comes in. If not, I might just play the under 2.5. Again, primarily strikers, and I think that's where it's going to stay. So I like Cody Garbrandt. I'm going to take him to win by second round KO. I think he finally figures out Raphael Assuncao and gets that finish, and he finally stamps his return. And hopefully we see an ever-improved Cody Garbrandt moving forward. All right, time for the main event. And on paper, it does not seem like it's the most exciting main event or anything like that. But Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer, minus 600 for Amanda Nunes, plus 450 for Felicia Spencer. This fight, it could actually steal the show, strictly due to the fact that we could potentially see a giant upset here. So let's start off with the challenger, Felicia Spencer. She was the former Invicta featherweight champion, and then she came over to the UFC, fought Megan Anderson, fought Chris Cyborg, lost that fight, which is her only professional loss to date, and then she beat Zara Farron last time out, and now she is scheduled to fight Amanda Nunes for the featherweight strap. This division is a little bit of a wasteland. There's not too many women here. Out of those 5 women I just mentioned, those are pretty much all there is. The rest of them are Invicta, and I don't believe that they're at the level of talent that the UFC should be having, at least in their organization. But that's besides the fact. Let's get into actually breaking down this fight. Felicia Spencer, she doesn't really make any bones about it. You know where she wants to get this fight. She gets the fight to the ground, and then she goes for the finish. Megan Anderson and Zara Farron, she only needed one takedown on each of those ladies to get this fight to the ground and get the finish that she was seeking. She was looking for that finish against Chris Cyborg as well, too. And that was a fight where a lot of people thought Cyborg was just going to go in there and completely murder Felicia Spencer in that first round. But she showed great resilience. She even cut Chris Cyborg in that first round. Really placed a little bit of adversity in Chris Cyborg there. I like Felicia Spencer in terms of her grittiness and in terms of her toughness and getting fights to the ground. That's where she does the best of her work. Her hands could use a little bit of work, but they're good enough. And her chin is absolutely amazing too, to be able to eat all those shots that she was from Chris Cyborg. A lot of women would have folded, and a lot of women have folded from those shots from Chris Cyborg, but Felicia was just there the entire time. She didn't wilt at any point. Obviously, Chris did manage to keep this fight on the feet for the majority of the fight and allowed her to pretty much outpoint Felicia Spencer there. She has good entries. She's relentless. Her cardio is great too. I think she'll be able to put on a 5-round, performance here in terms of like being able to stay there and not really gas out or wilt under anything that Amanda Nunes is going to throw at her. Speaking of Amanda Nunes, let's go over to her. She's obviously cemented herself as probably the women's GOAT. Wins over Ronda Rousey, Chris Cyborg, especially in the fashion of that fight. Valentina Shevchenko twice, Holly Holm, Jermaine Durandamy. We've seen her put together all-time performances when she's going up against these ladies. The one thing that Felicia, presents that these other ladies didn't was a grapple-heavy approach. Ronda Rousey, we already know her thing. Like, if she's not able to get the fight to the ground, she's going to be a fish out of water. And then Amanda Nunes was able to start her within 48 seconds there. Shevchenko, that fight primarily stayed on the feet, and it was a very close fight too. But I'm not saying that Felicia is going to go out there and try to strike with Amanda Nunes here. Raquel Pennington, she went 1 for 8 on takedowns, and that one takedown that she got on Amanda Nunes in the second round didn't seem to be the hardest to get either. So I believe that Felicia Spencer will be able to implement some sort of takedown game here. Chris Cyborg, we obviously know what happened in that fight. Holly Holm had a little bit of a brain fart and got knocked out for it. And then Jermaine Durandamy, she had a little bit of success on the feet, which is why Amanda Nunes was forced to complete 8 takedowns over those 5 rounds to secure this fight, especially to be in the safest realm as possible. Felicia Spencer, I think, is going to make it a lot tougher of a fight than people are imagining. Minus 600, in my opinion, is a little bit crazy. I wouldn't go out there and parlay Amanda Nunes at those odds, but the line that I do like in this fight is the over 1.5. It's a little bit juicy at the minus 190, minus 200 range that it's currently at. I'm okay with that. I don't mind that. I think that we'll see. Nunes' last fight that actually was a quick finish was Chris Cyborg. And obviously Holly Holm, who had a little bit of a brain fart again, like I said. But when fighters are a little bit more hesitant, Amanda Nunes is okay with that, and she allows her game to slowly come to her. She's not going to go out there and force a finish or force any type of chaos or anything like that. I think Felicia Spencer is going to take her time and then slowly try to get Amanda Nunes into a position where she'll have her in the warning track and then just push her or kind of bull rush her and clinch her up against the cage. Felicia's a pretty solid featherweight. She's not the tallest or anything like that, but she's I don't want to say chunky because that sounds like derogatory, but like she's thick with two C's. She has a little bit of strength behind her. So I think she could cause Amanda Nunes some problems up against the cage in that cage area or that clinch area. And I think that will force this fight to be a little bit longer and definitely go over that 7.5 minute mark. We could see Felicia Spencer get the takedown here. We could see her riding up top on Amanda Nunes. And Nunes is good too with her jiu-jitsu. She's a black belt herself. But, if Felicia is able to wear on her for 5 rounds or 4 rounds or 3 rounds or whatever it's going to take for her to potentially get a finish or just even get a decision victory, it's highly possible. Like, again, out of her last however many fights, most of her opponents have been striking dominant. Valentina Shevchenko didn't really try to fuck around on the ground as much. We've seen her dominant there in the last couple fights, but she didn't really try to implement that as much in the Amanda Nunes fights. But here, that's pretty much Felicia Spencer's game. So I like the over here. That's something that I'm considering making a play on. But I'm staying the fuck away from parlaying Amanda Nunes at -600. If she was closer to like -300 or -250, that's a more parlayable line in my opinion. But -600 adds little to no value in any parlays that you want to throw together. So I still will pick Amanda Nunes. I think that she'll be able to, stifle the takedowns. I think that she'll be able to win off of points, just off of striking. I think we'll see like a similar style where Chris Cyborg was able to implement the same thing, where it's just like I'm just going to continuously shrug off any takedowns that are coming my way. Yeah, and she might give up a couple takedowns. That is absolutely true. But I'm not completely writing off the black belt in jiu-jitsu that Amanda Nunes is. So, I think it'll be tough for Felicia to get the finish, but there is absolutely the possibility that Felicia could get her down every single round and just ride out to opposition. But I'm going to go with Amanda Nunes. I think she's made a lot of improvements, during this crazy run that she's on. I like Nunes. Not betting it. The over is the only thing that is sexy enough to me to possibly risk a little bit of money there. Don't parlay Amanda Nunes here. This is a very, very dangerous fight. If she's going up against another striker, that's potential for her to implement a grapple heavy approach, just like she did in the Jermaine Durandamy fight. But here, she's going up against a girl with a really good chin, very durable, and has a clinch-heavy game that can drag this fight longer than it should be. And we could possibly see Amanda Nunes, her prior gas tank issues come back to fruition here. Maybe, because Felicia's going to be making her work. This isn't going to be a Valentina Shevchenko fight where they're just staring at each other and just waiting to counter one another. Like, this is going to be a fight where Amanda Nunes is going to have to work, and that could be tough. And, well, I know that Felicia Spencer will be able to go those rounds that she needs to go, round after round, going for takedowns and all that stuff. So I'm just not 1,000% confident in Amanda Nunes or Felicia Spencer or Amanda Nunes, actually, but I do really like the over 1.5 because I could definitely see a feeling out period as well as a lot of clinch positions and grappling positions with neither girl getting a finish. So official pick, Amanda Nunes by decision or even late stoppage. But over 1.5 is probably the way to go here. So that's the main event, and that's UFC 250. And this has been a crazy week in terms of putting this content together for you guys. I appreciate you guys, sitting tight and waiting for me to get all this stuff together and get it done with. It's crazy. As you guys already know, like I said at the top of the show, hit up the Patreon if you guys want to get these breakdowns a little bit sooner than the public gets it. We got a bunch of other perks up there in terms of the Best Bets article. I give you guys my leans as soon as possible. You guys get all my official plays, even when I'm charging the public. And there's a bunch of other perks out there. And you guys can hit me up whenever you want through there too. Make sure you guys follow me at MMA LOTN on Twitter. That's where I'm going to be posting all my picks whenever they're free. And then also the website, MMALOTN.ca. And lastly, the Lock of the Night Challenge and the Dog of the Night Challenge are slowly coming to a close. So if that's something that you're interested in, again, Lock of the Night Challenge is pretty much you pick one lock every event. It can't be worse than minus 250. And I believe we're going to have it go on for 6 months. Every UFC event, whoever accumulates the most amount of profit gets the pot. We split it between the top three. Obviously, 65%, 25%, and 10% in terms of pay scale. And then Dog of the Night Challenge, that's every 10 events. Pick one dog. You can choose between 1 and 3 units to play on them. One dog for every event, and whoever accumulates the most amount of profit in that amount of time gets the pot as well too. So hit me up if you guys are interested in that. The Twitter sphere is probably the best way to get a hold of me, at MMALOTN once again. All right, good luck this weekend. Your boys getting married this weekend, like I said. Wish me luck. I'll be off the grid from Saturday all the way until Tuesday, so if you try to hit me up in between then, I won't get back to you. I'm going to be going dark on social media because I won't be watching this card live. I'll be enjoying my honeymoon per se with my soon-to-be wife. Really looking forward to that. I can't wait. We got a nice little cottage up north that we can just unwind at. I can't wait for that. But when I get back into the city, I got my man Tony who's going to be hooking me up with the fights, so I can just literally come home, plug the fights in, and just get to catching up, because there's nothing more I hate in this world than spoilers. So there's that. All right. Again, follow me on Twitter at MMALOTN. Check out the website, MMALOTN.ca. Everything's in the description below as well, too. And hit me in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about the video, what you guys think about my picks. And I went 8-2 last week, so hopefully we can keep this run going. All right. See you guys next week, and let's make some money.